The course has been a real life-giving thing for me to see how far I've come in understanding the power that I have in my own life and being able to teach that to other people who have experienced a similar difficulty has been so fucking rad. I cannot thank you guys enough for listening and being interested in what I have to say, and also being interested in changing your own lives. I remember having a conversation recently with somebody that I truly love and value and telling her, I remember how not good it felt inside of the affair. I remember that division that existed within me. Like, I couldn't be honest, but I so desperately wanted to be. And that fear of being honest was just, I don't know, an illusion. That fear of being honest was a total illusion that I had convinced myself was real. Hello and welcome to a solo episode with me. Haven't done one of these in a really long time. I've been pretty codependent, which is something that I'm learning to embrace about myself rather than reject or try to change. A lot of people wanted me to change myself for the sake of this business, and it wasn't working out. So I'd like to start by thanking you guys for your patience with me getting secure and comfortable in this entrepreneurship venture that I'm on. It's been a wild ride, that's for sure. To start something that started out, it was deeply personal, something that I was sharing so publicly. And I kept trying to convince myself that it wasn't. That trap when you keep trying to convince yourself of a lie, but you can't believe it. So you end up having to just face the truth. I've been having to do one of those with this whole venture of the other woman and the wife, and it's been another self-reckoning. I've been hearing a lot more from listeners of this podcast, whether you become a coaching client or whether you end up in the community. I end up hearing from you, or even in my DMs. I recently got a DM from someone that was like, I look forward to your podcast every single week. And I was like, I can't believe you listen to it. It's so nice to know that you're not just speaking out into a void, that people can actually hear you and understand the intent and the value that you aim to provide the world. All of that feedback is really welcome in my world, especially right now. Because I imagine everyone is coming out of their mandatory seasonal depression. I can feel warmth on my skin again. I have this season in my life where it's always dark and low, and I've just come to expect it. And when I first started to notice this pattern in my own life, I was like, why does this seem to always happen around the same date? And the window of time where I experience my darkest, lowest period is between the dates December 16th and February 7th. And those dates happen to be the birthday of my brother and the death date of my brother. It's been 15 years since he passed, but he's still very much within me, very present in my mind and very present in the way that I experience the world, for sure. But when I'm in that place of my darkest and my lowest time, one of the things that I've come to get really good at is remind myself of the truth. And the truth is that seasons are temporary. So if you're currently in a season that feels uncomfortable, I just want to remind you that it's temporary. It is a temporary season of discomfort. Almost nothing stays the same. A universal truth is that the only constant is change. And stagnation, I think, is when you try to convince yourself differently that everything is going to remain the same forever. Truly, I think that's just you trying to convince yourself to be in opposition of a universal truth. Oh, and by the way, if you hear cars and you're listening to this on audio, it's because I'm recording in my car. One of the things that I've noticed upon reflecting in the last year is my car feels like one of the safest places for me to speak openly. It's like my cone of silence. So I went ahead and touched on how to get yourself through the dark and the low periods of life. And I just really want to remind you guys that everything is temporary. Anytime that Stan and I get into some type of tiff about, most recently it was my AirPods. My AirPods are just completely ruined. I've had them replaced several times, and I'm pretty sure I've exhausted whatever guarantee and warranty that Apple has out there. And Stan looks over me and he goes, "It's because you don't take care of your stuff." I'm like, "No, that's actually not true. It's because I use my stuff to its fullest extent. And I'm not a pristine caretaker. Yeah, I've got dirt inside my AirPod case and other stuff that I don't want to talk about. But that disappointment you feel when something ends or the utilization period has exhausted itself. I remember coming up to that wall many times. This was temporary. This was such a temporary fulfillment. And realizing that was part of the experience, is that it would end at some point, and you would have to understand what that thing did to provide value for you, why you used it to that extent, what it brought to you. And so even with these AirPods, I'm like, of course I'm going to have to buy a new pair. They weren't meant to last forever. And don't be making any assumptions that I'm trying to compare AirPods to relationships, okay? I'm definitely not going to compare people to frozen burritos or anything like that. But I think that anytime you're having an experience you enjoy and it comes to an end, there's this sense of disappointment. That whole, the good days are in the past. You don't know you're in the good days when you're in them. It's the value of hindsight and retrospect. Anyways, one of the things that I want to do in this solo episode is touch on the things that I'm really enjoying right now. And a lot of what I'm enjoying right now is my work. My work being the community, the courses, my coaching sessions. And the reason why I'm going to share it with you guys here is not an effort to sell it to you, because that's very inauthentically me. I think we've seen Chelsea try and do that a few times and it doesn't work out for her. She gets really uncomfortable. I just talked about myself in the third person. How annoying. But Anne Marie told me something the other day that really stuck. And she said, "Chelsea, we can tell when you enjoy yourself and when you don't." And so I want to make sure that this podcast that celebrates my voice and what my voice means to other people is truly authentic, and that I give myself the space to talk about the things that I am truly enjoying. And I'm truly enjoying my work right now. So I also figured that it would be helpful to share some of the stuff that's going on in those areas of my life with you guys, because I do consider them highly valuable for the listeners of this podcast. And I would hate for you not to have value just because it's behind a paywall. So yeah, I'm going to read something that I shared inside of the community last week. It resonated for me very deeply as I'm pursuing some changes in my own life. But I wanted to share it with you guys because I was like, God, this one is so good. So I do a lot of writing inside of the community. And one of the things that I love about writing is I think it allows me to see different sides of myself. And it makes me happy to express myself that way. Anytime I write something and it resonates with somebody else, it's probably one of the most powerful experiences I've had on the internet, to speak my truth and have it mean something to somebody else. Okay, so sometimes I wake up at 4 a.m. Not sometimes, actually. Almost all the time I wake up at 4 a.m. And I usually have this urge to just get something off my chest. And so I've regularly been going into the community. And when I get that urge, I've decided to act on it. It does feel like an otherworldly urge. There's just something that needs to be shared. And my community has definitely become my safe space where I share a lot of myself. I wrote this at 3 a.m., but this is what it says. When it's time to go, the courage to choose your path. When the hardest part of leaving is knowing they want you to stay, you face one of life's most painful crossroads. The weight of another's desire can feel like an anchor, holding you to a shore that no longer feels like home. The body knows before the mind admits it. I felt more alive when I wasn't in their presence, less trapped in my own thoughts and more connected to my physical self. Our bodies often whisper truths our hearts are not ready to hear. Patterns reveal what words conceal. The same challenges kept surfacing, a cycle without resolution. As Einstein noted, insanity is doing the same thing repeatedly while expecting different results. When conversations become circular and wounds reopen without healing, the relationship has spoken its truth. Their life and yours matters more than the relationship itself. This perspective liberates you from the impossible burden of being responsible for another's happiness. You can only be responsible for the experience you are having, not everyone else's. That capacity simply doesn't exist within an individual. Love alone is not enough. Perhaps the most difficult lesson. Deep affection cannot sustain a relationship that lacks other essential elements. Love can exist without the relationship being productive or healthy for either person. Sometimes letting go is the greatest act of love possible. This paradox becomes clear only after making the difficult choice to leave. What feels like abandonment in the moment can actually be a profound gift, allowing both people the freedom to find paths better suited to who they truly are. True clarity often arrives in retrospect. When the decision to never return has already been made, the certainty you seek beforehand may be elusive, but the peace that follows a necessary ending confirms what your intuition knew all along. Support makes all the difference. Finding the courage to prioritize your own needs often comes from having support elsewhere when your partner cannot validate your decision. This outside perspective can be the lifeline that helps you trust your own knowing. The journey of leaving when someone wants you to stay requires acknowledging a difficult truth. Your responsibility to your own life must sometimes take precedence over your responsibility to another's desires. This isn't selfishness. It's the recognition that two people walking separate paths may ultimately be the most honest expression of care for both.
If you are the other woman in your relationship and you love this podcast, you would love the Other Women community. The Other Women community is a membership program designed to help other women just like you reclaim their relationship with themselves and heal from their affair. We provide a safe and supportive environment for you to open up and talk about your experiences. We give you the tools and resources you need to grow into an authentic, empowered individual. If you're ready to take the next step in your healing journey, head on over to theotherwomanandthewife.com/community to learn more about the membership and all it has to offer.
It's really hard to make decisions when your heart or your spirit and your body are like in complete division of one another. And one of the things that has caused me to reflect a lot is inside of coaching sessions when I hear about affair partners who have returned to the marriage after leaving for a small amount of time. When they do that bounce back thing, they're dealing with the division of who they should be and who they are. One of the clients that I met with this week, it was just so hard to listen to her talk about how she felt like she needed to go back to the marriage, not because she loved her husband, but because she didn't want to have to deal with the emotional fallout of her husband. And I remember asking her just, like with the utmost compassion and grace, truly. I asked her, do you trust your husband with his own emotions? Do you trust that he has the ability to navigate his own emotions? And she's no, because I'll just end up on the shit end of it. And it kills me because in effort of protecting herself and everyone else, it comes down to, I don't trust that this person can manage themselves emotionally without me being the thing that they project onto. She's his emotional wasteland, and how that dims her in her own life. And I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry. It sucks to watch so many of you return to somebody who doesn't know you and doesn't care to know you either. It's very sad to witness. Okay, so there's that. And I know it's sad for you to experience. And I definitely want to empower you through that and support you, because ultimately you guys are looking for support in a decision that your bodies have already made. And mentally, that anguish that exists, it's because of the stories that you're telling yourselves. Which brings me to my next piece. Something that I worked tirelessly on last year was preparing a course called Decide Confidently, Live Boldly. And I worked with Julie. She's our chief of knowledge. She has a long history in education, and she has been teaching me how to teach. I needed to learn how to teach. She is an excellent teacher. And I wanted to teach all of the things that I had learned between the affair ending and my current day. And some of the stuff that I wanted to teach you guys was the power of words, and how the words we want to express and we don't express are the ways that we stifle ourselves. Now, I am saying this to you to encourage you to speak up. But the other thing that you need to discern is who you can speak up around. I posted this thing on Instagram the other day about confession. Why does confessing your affair feel so damn good? The truth liberates. Holding secrets creates a prison in your mind, keeping parts of yourself hidden from the world. Confession breaks those chains, allowing you to experience the relief of being whole again. Your confidant matters. Not all listeners can hold your truth with the compassion and wisdom it deserves. Choose someone who can provide both accountability and grace, creating space for growth without shame. Confession unveils patterns. Speaking your truth aloud reveals the hidden need and wounds driving your choices. This awareness is the essential first step toward breaking cycles that no longer serve you. Repentance transforms minds. True repentance isn't about feeling sorry. It's a complete reorientation of how you see yourself and relationships. This psychological turning point creates space for new possibilities to emerge. Renewal requires practice. Transformed thinking must be reinforced through intentional daily choices. Each authentic decision strengthens neural pathways that support your evolved identity and relationships. I bring this up because the course is essentially how to navigate truthful thinking. Okay. What brought this business to life was I had identified a lot of flaws in the logic of infidelity content and how it was keeping people stuck. You can't move when you are sitting in shame. It's a very perfect place for isolation and self-relegation to thrive. And that will not get you in a direction of your choosing or even at a destiny of your own choosing. There's this really profound quote by Carl Jung. And I think it goes, until you make the unconscious conscious, you will allow it to direct your life and call it fate. And I remember when I first stumbled upon that quote and me being like totally shell shocked. What? Unconscious, conscious, asleep, awake? What does this all mean? And I think what it means is that the parts of our lives that we truly enjoy, but we've been conditioned to believe that we shouldn't enjoy it, we will never see the power that we have in our own life. Back to the course. What I did was I started to identify all of the flaws in my own thinking pattern. I looked at the content that I was ingesting and what the purpose and goal of me ingesting that content was. So, right after the affair, I had bought probably every single Christian book about how to make a relationship work. And realizing that ingesting that content was changing the way that I operated inside of the relationship. It didn't actually change the way that I experienced relationships. And the reason why it didn't change the way that I experienced relationships was it was just me trying to find another formula to fit myself in. What I really needed was a self inquiry and the self reflection. I needed the space and the time to really uncover why I think the way that I think. And when I started to identify things that I thought weren't innate or true to me, like one example, and I know that I always go back to religion. You guys are going to have to just deal with me going through religious deconstruction and actually considering spirituality as an actual thing and not something I need to constantly invalidate. But when I was holding on to a belief system that wasn't intrinsic to me, it was me attempting to lie to myself, which I wasn't capable of upholding. It created that division within myself that I couldn't show up as fully me in any area of my life, because the lie that I was trying to convince myself of was that if you weren't a Christian, that you were somehow on a path to hell, when really I was creating my own hell inside of my own mind by trying to convince myself of that very statement and trying to convince other people of that very statement. I think when you're walking around the world with inaccurate narratives inside of your head, it creates internal suffering. So if I'm walking around the world and I'm inside of an affair and I am of the belief that I'm not a good wife because I'm inside of an affair, I'm not taking into account the totality of what a wife has been like for me. I'm more looking at what is the impact of me on other people. I haven't even assessed, do I want to be a wife? What is a good wife? What is a bad wife? Are there such things? Are there such things? Or is there just a wife and you have a negative experience of being a wife? That's something to consider. My favorite module inside of the course is the power of words. When I started to reflect on my own words, and I'll use myself as an example. When I hear myself speak to other people and I'm telling them what they need to do, I see that as a reflection of what I need. I can take something as simple as me telling my kids, hey, turn down the TV, right? What am I trying to create for myself in that moment? I'm not trying to control them, right? What am I trying to create for myself in that moment? I'm trying to create an environment with less noise. So, what is it that I'm seeking through asking them to do something? I am seeking a more peaceful existence. And now I have a choice. I can either require them to turn down the TV, or I can remove myself from the room since I'm the one who is bothered. Now, I'm not saying I'll never tell my kids to turn down the TV, because I certainly am the authority figure in their life. It's very important that I remain that in their life. But I also think that it's very important for me to be aware of what is the experience that I am hoping for myself by asking somebody else to do something. I see my vocalization of something that somebody else needs to do as a direct reflection of what it is that I need. This takes time, this takes practice. And I think that inside the course, as it relates to the power of words, I started to see my words differently and what words are actually capable of doing. And I think that words have the power to build and destroy, right? If you think about it, the pain and devastation of infidelity is usually because of the hope that words carried inside of vows that were made at a different point in time. And that isn't lost on me. I understand how devastating it is when somebody's words do not align with their actions. And so the power of words was really born out of the fact that I wanted to take my words super seriously. I wanted to expand my vocabulary so that I could articulate myself accurately. The course was my ability to articulate all of the undoing and the relearning that needed to occur to bring me from where I was at to where I am today. And a lot of that had to do with how I talked about my reality. If I spoke about my reality in a way that was devastating, I would only be perpetuating the devastation. If I started to talk about my reality in a way that I hoped it to be, I would arrive at some of the most magical experiences that I've ever had in my entire life. And this podcast being one of them. This has been an absolutely magical experience to feel so connected to people all over the globe. We have literally just put up a different opinion on a very controversial topic, only to hear from other people, oh my God, you said it. I was thinking it, but you said it. That verbal validation that occurs through the medium of the internet or Spotify or Apple or whatever it is very wondrous to me. It's very wondrous. The course has been a real life-giving thing for me to see how far I've come in understanding the power that I have in my own life and being able to teach that to other people who have experienced a similar difficulty has been so fucking rad. I cannot thank you guys enough for listening and being interested in what I have to say, and also being interested in changing your own lives. I remember having a conversation recently with somebody that I truly love and value and telling her, I remember how not good it felt inside of the affair. I remember that division that existed within me. Like I couldn't be honest, but I so desperately wanted to be. And that fear of being honest was just, I don't know, an illusion. That fear of being honest was a total illusion that I had convinced myself was real. There's that. And then, you know what? I've been reading this new book called The Conscious Creator. I found this book because as I've been navigating, spearheading this company, I've been wanting to be really intentional about the shit that I'm ingesting to lead me so that I can lead you guys well. If I'm not leading myself well, there's no fucking way that I can lead anybody else type thing. This is the book, Way of the Conscious Creator. And I discovered it because I'm on this new trajectory. When Stan and I first got together, I refused to look at spirituality content. I did allow myself to go into psychology and self-help, but I refused to believe that I could offload my decision to cheat to God in some way just by adopting a new framework. So that was something that I've resisted for, I think I'm 38. I've resisted it for 38 years. But God, is the curiosity and the joy there, which like One thing I've learned is if you follow your curiosity and your joy, you will arrive at the outcomes intended for you. And the outcomes that are intended for you are good. They are not bad. You do not have to fear them. I went on this retreat, a very small retreat. It was 12 people, and we just sat around and allowed the opportunity for conversation to occur. And while I was paying attention to one of the conversations that was occurring, the speaker had mentioned that one of the greatest spiritual teachers he knows is a guy that works at Trader Joe's. And his name is Asher Gray. And I was like, what? I want to know who the greatest spiritual teacher is, since I'm considering this whole school of thought and following my curiosity and my joy. And so I looked him up on Instagram, and he had some pretty profound shit to say. And naturally, I went to invite him on the podcast. And I started reading his book, Way of the Conscious Creator. In his book, one of the things that he had written that really spoke to me that I would like to share with all of you is fear is never the problem. Lack of spiritual connection is always the problem. I've been going to a bar when I get the opportunity to have dinner by myself and read. Reading is one of my favorite things to do. The reason why I love to read is it teaches me things about myself that I always knew, but for some reason needed to be reminded. And I share all of that with you because the contents of the course, you will find that it's not anything new. It is a concentrated reminder for the place that you're currently in. And you being able to lead yourself well requires you to ingest materials that are not the same. I remember thinking like, oh, I just need to spend more time in the Word. Oh, I just need to spend more time reading more self-help books. What I needed was a resource that was tailored to the experience that I was having. And by generating that resource for you guys, which like I have big plans to generate a lot of resources, by the way, because this market is missing the mark entirely as far as reaching the person who's experiencing infidelity, not necessarily reaching someone who wants to learn about infidelity. I had intended to reach the person experiencing infidelity so that the isolation was not going to take the light out of them. So when I concentrated everything into this course, it was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I needed then. And every so often, I need it again. I do re-listen to a lot of the shit that I share because sometimes even I need to be reminded. That's the thing about the truth. It doesn't change, but you do need to be reminded of it sometimes. I hope you guys enjoyed this solo episode. Tell me if you didn't. Well, tell me nicely. Don't send me a death threat. I had enough of those. I would encourage you to pay attention to the content that you're ingesting. If the content you're ingesting continues to make you feel like shit, it's time to change the content you are ingesting. That's not something that is speaking to you. That is something that is reinstating the shameful story that you have already articulated to yourself perfectly. And you know what? We're done with perfection. Let's move on to something else, something way more helpful. I guess this concludes the episode. I spent about 38 minutes just freely talking to you guys about topics that bring me a lot of joy. And you guys bring me a lot of joy, believe it or not. I love hearing your guys' stories. I love being someone who gets to sit in it with you for a period of time and get to know a reality that isn't mine. I love learning from your guys' experiences, and I love learning how to be more helpful to you in this time. I think that's it. I feel really settled within myself to be sharing all of this with you guys. And another thing, some of you guys have some unique Q&As. Send them my way. If you think that I've already answered the question, so what? ask it anyways. I'm certainly not going to tell you, oh, I already answered that. I think it's important that we ask all the questions because it's a two-part thing, right? You asking the question and me responding to the question is the relationship that's at play. But most importantly, it's that you're asking the questions that you feel like you want to ask. Ask them, ask away. There's a Q&A section on the website. There's something in the show description notes. And just another call out. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while and you truly enjoy it, please hit follow, please hit subscribe, whatever it is that allow us to take this endeavor further. And I have every intention of doing so. Please rate and review and Q&As, send them my way. I think that's it. Thank you guys for listening. I love shouting into the void and then hearing a response back. It's a pretty epic experience. Have a great week and go easy on yourselves. Love you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this podcast episode. We appreciate your support and would love to hear your thoughts on it. If you've made it this far, you're likely someone who is invested in the journey of being the other woman. We understand that this can be a difficult and complex experience, which is why we offer guided coaching to help you heal and move forward. We encourage you to explore the links in the episode description or visit theotherwomanandthewife.com/coaching to learn more about our exclusive coaching program and apply today. Thank you again for your support, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode.